Ian Lees-Galloway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The explanatory note on this legislation says that this bill gives effect to the policy intent of the original legislation passed. The debate occurred on the 14th of May 1998, but it came into effect on the 3rd of June 1998. So this whole debate and this whole legislation has been predicated on the premise that there was a clear policy statement from the 90s national government that it was their intention that the stand-down period should last a full 7 days. Now, I don't think a single member of this House has been able to find any evidence that that was in fact the policy intention. The only reference that we have to turn to try and find out what the policy intention of the government at the time was is the Hansard. And I've spent a fair amount of this evening, as I've been listening to the debate, thumbing through the relevant Hansard, and is no reference to the stand-down period and what the length of the stand-down period should be at all. Certainly not in the Minister's speeches, and it is the Minister's speeches to the House that we often go to find out what the policy intent actually is, and there's no reference in there at all. So at the outset, the purpose of this legislation stands on very, very shaky ground indeed. Then we have a variety of other issues that have been raised throughout the debate this evening. Principle of those is that if it was the policy intent of the then national government for the stand-down period to be a full 7 days, and this is a genuine mistake, it is a mistake born of rushed legislation. The original legislation was passed under urgency, actually during budget urgency, which appears to me to be a gross abuse of budget urgency, because this was not a budget measure at all, but it was passed under urgency. It was not shown to the opposition until a few hours before the debate took place. And this is the kind of error that occurs when you push things through under urgency. So in a way, it's deeply ironic that the current national government is seeking to fix a mistake made by a previous national government, a mistake that was made under urgency, by passing legislation under urgency. Legislation that the opposition has not had an opportunity to scrutinise properly, which we were given no regulatory impact statement for, which we've been given no background documents for, and which we have a very, very scant departmental disclosure statement. So we are at risk once again of making bad law that is not fit for purpose and does not actually achieve the policy intent that has been stated by the government. And I wonder what would have been the harm of taking this legislation to Select Committee, because it's been more than a year and a half since the government actually realised that it was acting illegally. And let's be clear about that. I've heard from members opposite that this is just a technical amendment to tidy up a technical mistake. That's not quite the truth. The truth is the government has been acting illegally. And the government has been acting illegally for some 17 years. And so, you know, governments of both hues have been acting illegally. But the interesting thing is that when this government discovered that it was acting illegally, it made a conscious decision to continue acting illegally. And it was only after that illegal action became publicly apparent that this government decided to take action. So I think that speaks to the values of this government. It's one thing to make a mistake. It's another to know that you're acting illegally and to continue to do so and hope that you can hide that from the public for as long as possible and only act when that information becomes publicly available. And that is what the government has done. So this is more than a technical amendment. This is actually retrospectively making what was illegal, legal. And through that process, denying people who have been adversely affected by the improper implementation of the legislation as it was enacted back in 1998, the opportunity to seek compensation for the illegal activities of the government. So when members opposite get up and make very brief speeches about how this is nothing more than a technical amendment, I say there is nothing that could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth, because that government knowingly acted illegally and in a way that detrimentally affected the incomes of potentially thousands of New Zealanders. And we know from the one bit of information that the Minister was able to give us is that over 8,000 people have made claims within the narrow opportunity that is available for people to make claims. That is 8,000 people. That will be a tiny subset of the total number of people who have been affected by this legislation. There's another thing that members opposite have been saying through the debate that I also want to challenge, and that is that this is a large number of very small claims, and I think that was the thrust of the ACT Party leader's contribution, that these are small claims that are of no real significance, and that Parliament and the Ministry for Social Development should not waste resources on dealing with those. But in fact, what we suspect and what we really know, again, we don't have details, but what we know is there will be a group of people who are severely and adversely affected by this. And I know this is a source of great amusement for National Party members, but there is a number of vulnerable working people who are severely and adversely affected by this. And those are people who are on temporary work, people who are on fixed term, who move in and out of fixed-term contracts, people who are on temporary contracts, people who get work through labour hire companies, people who move in and out of work on a regular basis. Because every time they move out of work and have to apply for a benefit, the stand-down period applies to them. And we've had the example of teacher aides, but there will be numerous other examples of people who, by the nature of their work, move in and out of work and will have had a number of these days where they have been illegally denied income through the benefit system, and that will total up over 17 years, maybe 5 times a year moving in and out of work. There could very well be some people who have been significantly impacted by that. Again, I say a source of amusement for the National Party, not so for those of us on this side of the House. We're actually concerned that there are people out there who have been severely adversely affected by the failure of this government to appropriately address this illegal activity that the government has been engaging in. So, as I said, I've been looking through the Hansard, looking for any indication that it was the government's original intent for the stand down to be 7 days, not 6 days. I couldn't find any, but I did find this, and I think it's an appropriate way to finish this debate. It's a quote from my predecessor and friend, the Honourable Steve Mahari, who said at the time during this debate, "This government wants to see beneficiaries be the fall guys for its faults. This government wants the victims of this government to pay for what it is not able to achieve. There is no opportunity in this bill. There is no chance for a person to get a decent job with a living wage. There is nothing about families in this bill. There is nothing about getting ahead in this bill. It is all about the government saying, we can't get the economy to grow. We can't give you a chance to get a job. We can't get wages to go up, and beneficiaries are going to wear it." Sir, those words are as true today as they were in 1998. And that, I think, is a very appropriate way to finish this debate on what is an appalling bill that has been a shambolic process to tidy up a classic National Party shambles.